Right, so we're going to move to the third presentation, and the speaker is Mohammed Hiddas. By the way, for some health constraints, and he couldn't make it to the conference, but he was insisting on giving his presentation, and he sent us the video. Well, so Mohammed Hiddas is going to talk about how to promote efficiently and effectively the role of English resource centers in both place and time. And so he has two very interesting concepts. The first one is how to virtualize the centers and how to digitize them. See ya.
I am Mohammed Hiddas from University ENS Meknes. I hope you're doing great. I hope you're enjoying the activities of the MoRCE-Net conference 2017. And I wish you a happy good stay in Marrakesh. Well, actually, due to some hefty constraints, I could not join the conference in person. Then, thanks to the request and the encouragement of Mr. Latif Zubair, I decided to compensate for my forced absence with this screencast presentation. I hope the sound of the screencast will be clear enough. Anyway, I tried to speak at a lower rate and make my speech as accurate as possible. Then I would like to express my sincere thanks and appreciation to Mr. President Mustafa Yassini, to Mr. Latif Zubair, and to all the members of the team for their enormous effort and time. By virtue of their experience and professional working, I'm quite sure this conference will be a great success. Then to Mr. or Ms. Chair of the present session, I say thank you for having introduced my paper, and don't worry too much about timing my presentation, because I'm going to time it, and I'm not going to allow myself to go beyond the 20 minutes that are scheduled for me. Exactly as if you were by my side. Actually, it is even more than that, because now I know it is rather much easier for you to stop me. I know you can stop me at the click of the button. Okay. Alright, so let's start the presentation. The interest of my participation consists in the idea of creating spacious workspaces for English resource centers, ERCs, with the ultimate objective of promoting mobile learning and subsequently giving a real push to the language learners of those centers. Actually, the idea came to me when I started thinking about the difficulties that both learners and teachers encounter when it comes to the constraint of place and time that surround the ERCs. While thinking about these issues, a popular Moroccan proverb came across my mind. The proverb says, when tightness overcomes you, resort to hanging. By analogy, the same thing happened in big cities all over the world. With the scarcity of land, people have opted for an upward expansion, an expansion towards the sky, which has actually been the main reason behind building skyscrapers. Then, for ERCs, as for any educational service, the most efficient way to overcome those sort of issues with considerably less effort and almost with no expenditure is likewise to opt for an upward extension. That is, to look up higher into the sky and migrate towards the clouds in order to benefit from a really airy space, and in this way gain much more freedom and much more mobility. From a practical perspective, this can be implemented by what I call in this paper virtualization. So, what is it to say virtualization for ERCs? This involves the transmigration of an ERC from the physical space, from the brick and
MoRCE location to an online platform, which entails moving an ERC together with its members, material, and activities to an online workspace. Such a migration can be partial or total. The partial virtualization requires the creation of a virtual workspace on the web as a complement to its physical counterpart. In this case, we get a hybrid ERC, which consists of two main localities, one physical and another virtual. The second type of migration is what we might call total virtualization. This implies dismissing an existing mortar and brick locality and replacing it completely with a virtual one. This may also imply building a virtual workspace right from the beginning without having any physical space beforehand. Actually, virtualization is a tangible need. It stands out as the easiest and most efficient means to do away with lots of hefty issues, namely the difficulties of finding an appropriate place to host an ERC, the multiple faceted problems of transportation that the members of the ERC, particularly students, endure. Virtualization that is remarkably the best way out from the limitations of place and the limitations of time that always track physical spaces. Therefore, to surpass all that spot of obstacles, we need to move ERCs to students rather than make students move to the ERCs. Actually, cloud computing has put at our disposal lots of great facilities. So, by mounting virtual workspaces, ERCs can be easily and instantly accessible from home or from any other place, with no rigid limitation whatsoever, neither in time nor in place. This is the real sense of mobility, and this is exactly what can help students pick up their learning potentialities to their most, because by doing so, you allow students to learn at their best convenience, each according to their individual learning style, their own pace, their personal preferences, and also each according to their situational circumstances. Actually, you can benefit from online space by simply creating an account on, for example, Facebook or any other social platform. However, it is highly recommended to opt for settling down on safer grounds, on platforms that are specially designed to host and manage educational activities. These are workspaces that are provided for free by educational platform designers like Edmodo and Workspaces classrooms. Then, as an essential condition, as the sine qua non to virtualization, we have, of course, to opt for digitization. To benefit from the valuable services of virtual workspaces, ERC administrators and sponsors at all levels of hierarchy should get sensitized to what virtualization really offers. Thus, opting for ebooks, e-reader devices, and e-reader software would be a smart choice, not only by virtue of the high mobility and the enormous facilities that those digital components provide, but also by virtue of their relatively lower price. Then, what is the rationale behind opting for e-material? With this special reference to ERCs, here is a list with the most apparent advantages. E-books lend themselves to highest rates of mobility. Students can choose any book they need from any place and at any time because they have access to the whole ERC library. They can, as I have just said, learn according to their own preferences and situational circumstances. Then, by adopting digital material, ERCs can easily share, exchange ebooks and other numeral documents. This also would allow ERC administrators to benefit from easy and fluent coordination and collaboration online, and thus save considerable amounts of time, effort, and money. By the way, last year in the fourth MoRCE-Net conference, I gave a presentation about e-reading, and I listed down many of its advantages, which unfortunately I can't cover entirely here. So for further information about this topic, you can see the record of last year's conference. In what regards the equipment of virtual ERCs, there are, however, two more things that I can't miss mentioning in this presentation. This has to do with some highly recommended software applications, keeping in mind that those ERC students are essentially Moroccan learners of English, and therefore these particular language learners do need some enhancing and facilitating applications to help them overcome two major difficulties, namely French-English interference and also that inherent mismatch that exists between the way words are written and the way they are pronounced in the English language. I mean that marked linguistic inconsistency which has actually created a wide gap between the orthographic and the phonetic form of English. By the way, this is why Robert Johnson, an American linguist and professor of English, said, English is not one language, but two, a written one and a spoken one. So, to help Moroccan students do away with those two major learning issues, ERCs can introduce and advocate to valuable utilities, like no paper-based material has ever done. These two applications can actually help those learners develop their English efficiently, not as two Englishes, but as one and the same language. The first of these two types of digital aids is what has become known as TTS apps. This stands for text-to-speech applications. Now, all of their devices are different with a built-in TTS application. This is an application which can read the script of a story, a book, and any other written text for its users. Actually, this application can be of much help to Moroccan students who very often, under the influence of French-English interference, develop in a way or another erroneous French-like pronunciation. The second type of software applications covers the range of what is called pop-up dictionaries. With the pop-up dictionary, students can look up a word by simply clicking on it without having to leave the text they are reading and without opening a separate dictionary and losing time on searching for the word in question. And this makes it really exciting and very practical. Very often these utilities provide also audio pronunciation and phonetic transcription. Additionally, they provide examples, etymology, and links to further search and further information, which actually can help students enlarge and enrich their vocabulary repertoires in a very pleasant way and at a much higher rate. On virtual workspaces, administrators can also provide their ERCs with additional materials from the web. After a remarkable scarcity of supportive documents in the near past, there is now an overflow of those elements. So the real challenge now lies in choosing among a huge amount of materials rather than it lies in simply trying to find the material. Accordingly, ERC administrators can feed their centers with the appropriate material, but with a serious consideration of a set of selected criteria. These are namely the learner's linguistic level, their age, and the motivating aspect of the topic. Administrators are also to check for ethical issues like racism, gender discrimination, taboo content, etc. They have also to check for the speaker's or narrator's language, whether it is native or non-native, formal or informal, whether it is American, British, international, and so on. The quality of the sound is also an important criterion. Clear sound has the power of keeping learners interested in both content and form. Then, as a last concern in this presentation, I would like to portray even so briefly the apprehension that some people have when it comes to the use of digital and virtual technology for educational purposes. In this regard, I'm going to focus on two main facts. And by the way, FACTS is an acronym which stands for Frequently Asked Questions. Okay, accordingly, one would say, yes, the idea of moving or duplicating ERCs online might sound fabulous, just like a sweet dream. But how about feasibility? How can ERC managers implement such a new project, keeping in mind that not all students can have at their disposal a computer, a smartphone, or a tablet? Let's not talk about e-readers, which are now commonly used among those learners. Another commonly expressed fear in the list of facts has to do with connectivity. Pessimistically, some people would say there is no guarantee all students can get connected to the internet in order to join their virtual ERCs online. In fact, I've become used to people who show doubts and sometimes even fear vis-à-vis educational technology. I rather find that quite normal and legitimate. Then, without overlooking the genuine realities of our rugged context, I try, however, to dissipate fear and worry. Then, to those who have doubts and apprehension, I would like, firstly, to remind that we are in a digital era, and that those learners for whom we fear from virtualization and digitalization are actually digital natives, that most of their own digital devices use digital applications that get connected to the internet in their daily life. This generation of young learners is born and lives in a digital world. So, our role as educators is rather to assist, to guide, and not let those youngsters get lost in the immensity and the wildness of the net. Then, creating virtual ERCs and inviting those young learners to join would rather orient them to what can really benefit them at the best of their conveniences. So, let's only check whether they all have the means required, and then presumably a large part of ERC budget to substitute for the lack, if need be. Another measure would be to encourage ERC members to share and cooperate with the means available. With the help and the guidance of the ERC administrators, cooperation and collaboration within small but well practitioner groups can actually come out with fabulous results. Then, if due to the problem of connectivity, it turns out that some of those learners can't have access to their ERC online, these somewhat unlucky students can find many other opportunities to try again. Otherwise, and as a last result, they can use a simple USB memory stick to make a copy of the document needed. They can get a copy from the administrator or from any member of their group. By taking this sort of easy measures, we would help this new generation of learners get the most of their digital world and meet the best of our expectancies. Then, let's only make sure that no one of them is left behind. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. Presumably, I'm now with you online. I believe you can easily reach me, unless there is a problem of connectivity in this conference hall. Anyway, I would be delighted to receive and answer your questions. Thank you again.